Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts about the 40K universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we talk about the hive world of Necromunda. Let's get into 40 facts about Necromunda. Necromunda is a hive world in the Imperium of Man Segmentum Solar and a major producer of munitions, lasguns, autoguns, shotguns, and bolters, among other weapons. The planet also levies huge number of troops for the Imperial Guard, most notably the regiments of the Necromundan Spiders, as well as the other crucial supplies. To learn of Necromunda's history, we must know of the two wars of Arrhenius. Arrhenius Prime was first settled over 15,000 Terran years ago, during the Dark Age of technology, as a mining and manufacturing colony. The worlds of Arrhenius continuity were a series of planets close to the Sol system, which had maintained links to one another due to the existence of a series of ancient warp gates of unknown origin. Ruled by a caste of tech nobility from the worlds of Arrhenius Prime at the heart of the network of warp gates, the continuity was a kingdom of iron and hungering industry. Contact between the Imperium and this pocket of humanity occurred by accident. A lost squadron of warships returning from the Genhenial persecution was forced from the warp into one of the continuity's peripheral systems. Before they could jump back into the warp, the squadron was surrounded, boarded, and overwhelmed by cybernetic grafted warriors. The cries of the squadron's astropath echoed through the immaterium, and far away the Imperium heard and turned its gaze upon the worlds of Arrhenius. An envoy fleet was sent, and was allowed to return bearing the continuity's answer to the Emperor's demand of fealty. The tech nobility flatly refused to bow to the Emperor, but instead invited him to join their empire as a tributary. For its response, the Imperium turned to the Imperial 5th Space Marine Legion. It fell to Hashin Yonad, commander of the 39th Household, chapter of Inuit, to persecute the war. A superlative warrior, Yonad was reckoned by many to be one of the Imperium's greatest strategists. Called upon many times as a fleet commander and siege master, he planned meticulously and executed his plan with brutal swiftness. Marshalling his fleet at Talaran, thousands of warships carrying over 20,000 Imperial fists, alongside millions of troops of the Imperial Army and the Mechanicum, launched their assault upon the unsuspecting system of the Arrhenius. Within 2 solar months, the continuity was reduced to a single core world of Arrhenius Prime. Their empire cut from around them, the tech nobility in their iron towers looked to the night sky and saw the darkness stolen by the light of the Imperial fleet. They surrendered then, and the sun rose the next day on the set of yet another stellar empire brought to Imperial compliance. But even as the Imperium moved to claim their prize, the worlds of Arrhenius continuity were beset by an unknown menace. A few accounts speak of a darkness deeper than the void, of living lightning and flame-wreathed chrome. 6 systems burned, their stars ignited to terrible life, before crumbling to cold ember. Commander Yonad made the terrible decision to defend only some of the worlds, otherwise they would all be lost. As the unknown enemy appeared in system after system, they met the Imperial Fists. As more of the enemy came, the Imperial Fists denoted warheads they had attached to each warp gate. Without their gates, the unknown enemy simply vanished. Their advance had been halted on Arrhenius Prime when its gates exploded. All but one of the star systems of the continuity died, and at the cost of 1,000 Imperial Fists and billions of humans, Arrhenius Prime survived, but barely. The death of the warp gate and the cluster of Xenos craft which had penetrated the Imperial Fist's line had changed the shape of the planet. Its surface had been ravaged by unnatural fire. Its world city cracked and rendered to dust and ash, from which the shattered roots of its great towers rose like broken teeth. Looking upon the charred remains taken from the pyre, the Imperium gave the world a new name, one that echoed with a world brought to the threshold of death, but one that still lived. Necromunda, they called it. The ensuing millennia have not changed its basic purpose very much. Necromunda is still a world of mines, factories, refineries, and processing plants. The planet is a vast powerhouse of industry, making thousands and thousands of different items for use throughout the nearby imperial planetary systems of the Segmentum Solar. Nothing which can contribute to the planet's output has been left untouched. From the tops of the highest mountains to the depths of the oceans, the wealth of Necromunda has been extracted. Mountains have been reduced to rubble for the ore they contain. Oceans have been turned into little more than chemical sludge ponds by the constant industrial pollution. The once fertile plains of the world have disappeared under huge urban developments of imposing housing and factories, forming new ranges of man-made urban mountains, every bit as tall as the longest flattened natural topographical features. These huge towering urban arcology complexes are known as hive cities, or simply as hives, and their individuals, peak or tower, are called city spires. A close group of urban hives is known as a hive cluster. Between the hives, deserts of industrial ash cover the surface of the planet with a mobile, corrosive skin. Over this desert lies a cloud layer of airborne pollution, so that the great spires of the city hives rise from the drifting mists of tainted vapor, like islands appearing out of the ashen sea. The hives and hive clusters are connected through the ash wastes by so-called ash trains, long trains of transport cars outfitted with reinforced balloon wheels that can travel between the wastes on a system of tracks, delivering passengers and goods. These trains are often attacked by the nomadic tribes of mutants called ash raiders, who have somehow adapted to life in the poisonous ash wastes. Despite being reduced to such a hellish environment state, Necromunda is still a valuable world to the Imperium. Although little of Necromunda's original resources remain, the waste heaps of previous generations have become a new source of richness. Necromunda lives on the accumulated wastes of its past. Its people have learned to scavenge, reclaim, and recycle everything in order to squeeze a living from their exhausted world. Necromunda's population has increased well beyond the planetary's capacity to support it. As a consequence, it is wholly reliant on synthetic and imported foods. Each hive has its own recycling plant, which converts previously used organic matter and waste into synthetic food. Real food is imported from off-planet, but it is an expensive luxury which only the most wealthy and prestigious Necromundans from the world's aristocracy can afford. There are probably more people now on Necromunda than there ever lived in the entire history of Terra, up until the end of the 20th century, in the second millennium. In an attempted imperial census of Trazior Hive, 4,000 years ago in the 37th millennium, revealed an estimated population of 1 billion in the upper habitation levels alone. No further attempt has been made to count Necromunda's population in Trazior, or any other of the several thousand hives on the planet, though the world's population must be over 100 billion people. The society of Necromundan is reasonably typical of a larger hive world. No attempt is made to enforce centralized administration upon the entire population. Indeed, such a thing would prove impossible on a world where most people remain unrecorded by any authority. Instead, a kind of feudal system has developed by which individual people owe loyalty to others, who in their return owe loyalty to others, increasing more powerful members of the hierarchy. Among the more stable elements of the population, these loyalties, owed on a family basis, and closely related families all support each other under the leadership of the most powerful member of their family group. This form of urban feudalism tends to be self-regulating. Weaker clans naturally seek the protection of the more powerful neighbors, whose power base then expands until it reaches the limit whereby its numbers and resources are simply too few to allow it to expand any further. Where rival clans meet, it is inevitable that their power will be tested in combat, the ability of a clan to exert its power being the only true measure of its influence. The endless feud between the warrior gangs are never ending. The governor and ruler of Necromunda is Imperial Commander Lord Gorontius Helmward. His ancestors are known to have reigned for the past 7,000 years at least, records of government before that time having long since disappeared. Even the archives of the Adeptus Administrorum and the bureaucracy of the Imperium are remarkably silent on the history of Necromunda during the early days of the Imperium. Lord Helmward occupies the very top of Necromundan feudal hierarchy. The society he rules over is divided into many factions, which continually repeat and cooperate with each other, giving rise to endless change in the feudal hierarchy. Lord Helmar is completely unconcerned with the activities of lesser power brokers. He deals directly with the most powerful factions. If a major player in the power game proves weak or treacherous, it is a simple matter of Helmar to withdraw his support. The very rumor that he might be about to do this is enough to encourage a feudal inferior's enemies to turn against him and betray him. The Adeptus Terra leaves Lord Helmar to govern his domain as he pleases, as it leaves all Imperial commanders free to administrate their worlds. The Imperial Commander forms a link in the feudal chain which extends throughout the galaxy to the heart of the Adeptus Terra. So long as Helmar fulfills his feudal obligation to the Imperium, his position remains secure. Helmar's main obligation to the Imperium is to provide a tax, which takes the form of a percentage of all goods Necromunda produces. As the entire production capacity of the world is given over to providing manufactured goods for the Imperium, the tax is taken as a straight discount on the revenue earned. So long as Necromunda continues to meet these responsibilities, and so long as its production capacity is sufficiently high, the Imperium remains quite satisfied. Hive worlds like Necromunda provide the Imperium with another useful resource, namely its people. Necromunda produces generation of tough youth, with a strong sense of self-reliance. They are highly valued as recruits for the Imperial Guard and even for some of the Space Marine chapters. Providing recruits in vast numbers is another of Lord Helmar's feudal obligations. Recruitment brings officials from the Imperium to Necromunda to inspect and in some cases conduct recruiting drives amongst the fighting gangs. Helmar himself is obligated to provide troops from his personal guard, usually a whole regiment at a time. Because the planet supplies so many troops for the Imperial Guard, the name of Necromunda is known throughout the galaxy, even by people who know nothing about the planet itself. Over the centuries, Necromundan regiments have fought with distinction in the Imperial Guard, and have earned the fearsome reputation on many battlefronts. Another important obligation is that Lord Helmar successfully control the number of dangerous mutants. These psykers, or witches, are a mutation which is becoming increasingly common on all worlds of the Imperium. On most worlds they can be dealt with fairly easily, but on a hive world like Necromunda, with its vast population, the matter is much more difficult. Psykers are very dangerous indeed, probably more so than even they realize. Although some are able to control their powers and use them for their benefit of society, the majority are unable to control their powers properly, with disastrous results. Some become hosts to demonic powers from the Immaterium, while others attract psychically sensitive aliens or psychic diseases, which can then leap into the minds of ordinary people. If psykers were to go unchecked throughout the Imperium, human society would soon collapse. Indeed, this is one of the reasons why the Emperor clings so tenaciously to life, as only he understands the dangers of possession and psychic destruction. And those were 40 facts about Necromunda. We're not done. We're going to get into the specifics of each gang, and we're going to talk about their, or like the hive towers that I mentioned, and hive clusters. So please subscribe to the channel to get more lore on the topic of Necromunda. And of course, subscribe to the channel just so you can get Warhammer 40K content every single day. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.